Dr. Kethvaros of the Nexus Medical Consortium considered herself the galaxy's foremost expert on skeletal biology. Through her 4 centuries of research, she documented the bone density variations of over 300 species, from the crystalline frameworks of the shardfolk to the flexible cartilage matrices of the deep swimmers. Her academic papers were required reading in xenobiology departments across 17 systems. Extensive education had prepared her for human bones. It began during the Galactic Health Summit on Meridian Station, where medical professionals from across known space gathered to share breakthrough treatments and anatomical discoveries. Dr. Kethvaros had been particularly excited to meet the human delegation. These newcomers to galactic society had caused quite a stir with their unconventional medical practices. She found herself seated across from Dr. Marcus Vale, Earth's chief medical officer for interstellar relations, during the welcome dinner. The human was pleasant enough, though Kethvaros couldn't help but notice how fragile he appeared. Humans, according to preliminary reports, had one of the lowest bone density ratings among spacefaring species. "Your skeletal structure intrigues me," Kethvaros admitted, her chitinous mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "Our scans suggest human bones are quite delicate. How do you manage interstellar travel without constant fractures?" Dr. Vale chuckled, a sound that Kethvaros found oddly unsettling. "Delicate? That's a new one. Back home we call them dense as rocks." Kethvaros's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. "Impossible. Our preliminary readings show calcium carbonate density levels barely above the galactic minimum threshold." "Maybe your equipment needs calibration," Vale suggested with a smile that showed far too many teeth. As any proper scientist would, Kethvaros demanded empirical evidence. The next morning, she formally requested permission to conduct a comprehensive study of human skeletal resilience. Dr. Vale, to her surprise, agreed enthusiastically. "This should be interesting," the human said, and something in his tone made Kethvaros's exoskeleton shiver. Test 1. Standard compression analysis. Kethvaros began conservatively. Using the standard galactic protocol, she applied graduated pressure to a small bone sample Dr. Vale had provided, a fragment from a recently healed fracture. "This should reach failure point at approximately 2,000 pressure units," Kethvaros announced to her assistant, a nervous spiral-limbed being named Quix who operated the compression device. The machine hummed. 2,000 units, no fracture. 3,000 units, still intact. At 4,000 units, Kethvaros's eye stalks nearly popped from her head. "Recalibrate the machine," she ordered. 3 recalibrations later, the bone sample finally showed stress fractures at 7,200 pressure units, nearly 4 times the galactic average. "Fascinating," Kethvaros muttered, making frantic notes. "The calcium matrix appears to have a crystalline reinforcement structure. But this is just a small sample." Dr. Vale, who had been watching with amusement, rolled up his sleeve. "Want to test the real thing? Test 2. Impact resistance." Kethvaros hesitated. Direct testing on a living subject violated several ethical protocols. But Dr. Vale insisted, claiming it was perfectly safe and that humans did this all the time for fun. Using a calibrated impact device designed for emergency medical assessment, Kethvaros began with the lowest setting, enough to fracture a Zephyrian's wing bone. Thunk. Dr. Vale didn't even flinch. "That's it. Try harder." Kethvaros increased the setting. The impact would have shattered a crystalline support structure. Dr. Vale rubbed the spot and grinned. Getting warmer. By the time they reached setting 7, an impact force that would pulverize most species' bones, any rational scientist would have ended the experiment there. But she was no longer dealing with rational science. She was witnessing something that challenged the very foundations of galactic medical knowledge. Dr. Vale contacted his ship and requested a sparring partner. 20 minutes later, another human arrived, a massive specimen named Captain Torres, whose bone density readings made Dr. Vale look delicate by comparison. "Full contact?" Torres asked. "Standard rules," Dr. Vale confirmed. What followed was the most terrifying display of controlled violence Kethvaros had ever witnessed. The two humans struck each other with forces that would have killed most galactic species, their bones absorbing and redirecting impacts that measured in the thousands of pressure units. Kicks that should have shattered femurs were shrugged off. Blocks that should have pulverized forearms barely registered. When Torres accidentally struck the metal wall during a missed punch, he dented the reinforced bulkhead, while his knuckles remained perfectly intact. "Combat conditioning," Dr. Vale explained afterward, barely breathing hard. "Humans have been doing this for thousands of years. Our bones evolved for it." Kethvaros' datapad slipped from her nerveless appendages. Personal log. Final assessment. Dr. Kethvaros. Personal research notes. Day 847 of the Galactic Standard Calendar. I must formally retract every academic paper I have ever published on skeletal biology. Human bones are not bones as we understand them. They are a self-repairing, adaptive armor system that grows stronger under stress and regenerates from damage with unprecedented efficiency. I have witnessed a human strike ceramic with enough force to shatter starship hulls without sustaining injury. I have watched their skeletal structure adapt in real time to environmental pressures that would crush most known species. Their bones do not simply support their bodies. They are weapons, shields, and engineering marvels wrapped in deceptively soft flesh. The humans call this normal. They teach their young to deliberately stress their bones through something called sports and exercise. They consider breaking objects with their bare hands a form of recreation. I believe we've fundamentally misunderstood what kind of species we have welcomed into the galactic community. Epilogue. The report. 3 weeks later, at the Galactic Medical Council's quarterly assembly, Dr. Kethvaros stood before representatives from 200 worlds. Her presentation was scheduled for 30 minutes. She spoke for 3 hours. "Humans," she began, her voice shaking slightly, "do not simply have bones. They have weaponized their own skeletons." The assembly erupted in disbelief. The Nexus-born delegate accused her of fabricating data. The Aquatic Collective representative suggested she had suffered some form of neurological episode. Dr. Vale, who had been invited to observe, stood up in the gallery. "Any questions?" he asked cheerfully. The room fell silent. In the back row, a junior researcher from the Nexus Medical Consortium raised a tentative appendage. "How many of you are there?" Dr. Vale smiled. That terrifying display of calcified weapons that humans called teeth. "About 8 billion on Earth alone. And we're just getting started with space colonization." The assembly remained silent for a very long time. From her seat in the front row, Dr. Kethvaros made a final note in her research journal. Recommendation: immediate reclassification of human skeletal system from fragile to structurally impossible. Secondary recommendation: never, under any circumstances, make a human angry. Before we wrap up this incredible journey into human biology, I want to hear from you. What's the most impressive feat of human endurance or strength you've ever witnessed? Maybe it was something you did yourself or saw someone else accomplish. Drop your stories in the comments below, because if there's one thing we've learned today, it's that humans are capable of absolutely incredible things. The universe had been a quieter place before humanity joined the galactic community. Dr. Kefvaros was beginning to suspect it would never be quiet again. And despite everything she had witnessed, despite the complete upheaval of her understanding of biological science, she found herself oddly comforted by that thought. After all, when the universe got dangerous, it was good to have friends with unbreakable bones.